Hey guys, Shimro here, just doing a quick video on Guardian talents. This video is going to be focused mainly just on the talents that I believe are useful for Guardians. I'll also place some focus on some that will also be useful for Feral. This is just because some of the talents due to both Guardian and Feral using agility as being their main primary stat, some of the talents will be just as useful for both. However, this isn't always the case. If we look at the first tier, all three of these talents could be fairly useful in a Guardian form. Although personally, if you're looking at raiding, I would say that either you'd want to pick Feline Swiftness. This is just because you're going to have a nice movement buff without having to use a boot enchant for your Guardian. This could mean that you are able to get out of stuff on the floor. It could mean that you're able to just get within range of maybe a stray mob, or if it's the case that you have to move from one point of the map to another point of the map quickly, this is just going to give you an extra boost. I haven't checked so far in MOP going to live whether it's still going to be the case that you can stack your 15% movement speed on top of boot enchants. If it is the case that that is possible, we could be finding ourselves with a huge advantage using this talent, because suddenly it means that not just when you're raiding, but obviously when you're leveling, when you're doing anything, to be honest, as Guardian, or in your Guardian spec, you're always going to have a 30% boost. With this talent, obviously, you're just going to only have a 15, which even for leveling, that's still very nice. Displace a beast. Personally, as a Guardian, this is pretty much useless, just because it turns you into cat form and puts you into prowl. It is nice to be able to get 20 yards forward, but because it's a 30-second cooldown as well, you're not going to be able to move as far a distance as, say, if you use Feline Swiftness. This is very much more a cat leveling not glyph talent. Something that would be very, very useful for cats in PVP. It could be something that could also be useful when we go into raiding. However, it would only be a one-use ability, and I'm not exactly sure what will happen regarding using this ability for it not being able to turn into prowl if you're already in combat. If it's the case that bear catting still could be optimal, if you're an off tank as a Guardian, then this could be a very good talent, just because it will allow you to quickly turn into your cat form. The downside being you get moved 20 yards forward. The final one here on the 15 tier is Wild Charge. Now, in bear form, charge to an enemy, immobilizing them for 4 seconds. Personally, in raiding, unless you need to move, and you need to move quickly, so the 15% would be very advantageous, this is definitely the talent you need to go for. Not so much because of the immobilization, because that isn't going to work on bosses as far as I'm aware. Stuns have never worked on bosses before, so it's very unlikely that this would. The point of this is that this gives you a charge. Now, at the beginning of a fight, this is very good because it allows you to get to the boss, to the enemy, whatever it is, and allow yourself to cement some aggro within the first 5 seconds. If obviously you're not getting the aggro in the first 5 seconds, then the DPS could take over aggro. Even though there is the 500% threat boost that had been put in place a couple of months ago on live, I have still seen some situations where if a tank didn't know what abilities to use, a DPS could still out aggro them, but it is a situation that is very, very rare. Now, to use this in cat form, leaping behind an enemy, dazing them for 3 seconds, this is very much a PvP talent than anything else. In my personal opinion, if you're going to be going cat, you either want to be using Displacer Beast for leveling. Feline Swiftness I would probably say is going to be best for cat raiding, just because then you can move about quickly. If it's the case that there are no boss fights that actually require the extra speed, then it may be the case it would be better to go for Displacer Beast, or to go for Wild Charge, just because it will allow you to get behind the boss quickly, thus removing parry, and thus not really requiring you to have to hit the soft cap or hard cap for expertise as it is in live. In regards to leveling, this could be a good talent for Guardian. It's nice to have that stun. Personally, leveling as a Guardian, I will go for Feline Swiftness, just because it will get me between mobs quickly. It'll also allow me to pick up quests and move on quickly. It'll just get me to the quest giver that little bit faster. In regards to anyone doing Guardian PvP, say Raided Battlegrounds, Feline Swiftness I certainly think is going to be the talent you're going to go for. Wild Charge is nice, but having that 15% movement speed constantly as a passive is, to me, just that much better. There may be viewers who are PvPers who may think differently. If you do think differently, please do tell me in the comments. It would be great to have some insight on that, just because I'm not a big bear flag carrier, just because at the moment in live bears aren't very good in regards to being flag carriers in Rated Battlegrounds. Moving on to the 30 talents. Firstly, Nature's Swiftness. This to me, it isn't something that a Guardian's ever going to use. Guardians, to use any of the spells that are mentioned, Cyclone, Entangling Roots, Healing Touch, Hibernate, Nourish, Rebirth or Regrowth, all of those you would have to come out of form. Now if you're in bear form, most of the time it's going to be because you're tanking, and if you're tanking, the last thing you want to have to do is come out of form, unless for some reason you need to do a rebirth. But hopefully, if you're doing fine, you'll never need to use that rebirth. This is certainly something that's probably best left for your restos or for your boomkins. I can't see this being good for a kitty either. I can't see this being any good for PvP either for Guardian or kitty. Moving on to Renewal. Personally, this is the talent I've chosen for Guardian. To me, this is the most advantageous. 2-minute cooldown, you get a 30% of your maximum health heal. It is quite a long cooldown, but it does mean in most fights you're probably going to be able to get to use this 3 times. Which, to me, if you're really in a position where, say for example, a healer's gone down, or if there's just a lot of damage coming very, very quickly, this could be an amazing spell to be able to use just on the fly every 2 minutes. For cat, this could be good. It certainly save your healers a bit of mana, but in comparison to Cenarian Ward, yeah, I would say if you're a cat, I'd still say to go for Renewal. To be honest, I'd probably also say if you're a boomkin, if you're raiding, I'd say go for Renewal. If you're doing leveling or PvP, probably go for Nature's Swiftness. And Cenarian Ward, I would pretty much say is just for resto. No one else should really be using it. Moving on to the 45s, we've got Fairy Swarm. Grants an improved version of Fairy Fire that also reduces the target's movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds. This could be good. The problem is I can't see it being very good in raiding, purely because I wouldn't see this effect being possible to use on a boss. I also think that it would only be good in relation to slowing down trash, but because I've chosen Wild Charge myself, choosing Fairy Storm would almost be pointless, because I don't want to slow down the mobs coming to me if I'm tanking. If I'm playing kitty, then it's very nice for PvP. It would also be very nice for a Guardian if you're doing rated battlegrounds. That'd be very nice, just because then it would stop, especially melee, from getting to you. Moving on to mass entanglement, I can't really see this being very good as a Guardian, unless it's for trash, and it could be a fairly nice spell just to keep some enemies in place. Although personally, if you're tanking, I can't really see why you'd need to, unless it's going to be CCing mobs as we had to at the beginning of Kata. But at the moment, I haven't seen anything on MMO Champion or any blue threads saying that they're going to be making CC the way it was at the beginning of Kata. So personally, whether it be for Boomkin, whether it be for Feral, whether it be for Guardian, I'd say go for Typhoon. Just because as a Guardian, if you've got something similar to, say, the was it Chirog or something, whichever was the last boss of BOT, obviously when the ads came, you had to get them down as fast as possible before they were able to either touch any of your team or before they were able to touch the boss itself. If there's a boss that happens to have a mechanic like this could be amazing for a Guardian. It could also be very good for a cat. It could be as good as it is on live for a Boomkin. If we're looking at PvP, I can see this being the most useful for Guardian and for Cat. It's also obviously quite nice if you're doing Eye of the Storm, if you're doing AB, just something extra to be able to knock people off the side. Obviously this isn't going to work if you're doing rated battlegrounds, especially for Eye of the Storm, just because they put up an invisible wall. For AB they don't, so this would still be useful for that. If you are a Boomkin, it would be entirely dependent. It could be the case that any three of these are good. It would just be based around what your playstyle is, which is going to be the most beneficial. Moving on to 60, started with Soul of the Forest, so we're going to be looking at, for Feral, your finishing moves grant 4 energy per combo point. Guardian, Mangle, your Mangled now generates an additional 2 rage. As a Guardian, I can't really see this being that useful. It's nice to get the additional 2 rage, but personally to me it isn't really enough. For Feral, finishing moves granting 4 energy per combo point, this could be quite nice because it means you're going to get a 20 energy every finishing move that you use. If it's the case that you are able to very quickly get finishing moves set up, say for example Ferocious Bites or Savage Roar or something like that, this could be a really great way to keep your energy very, very high. Which if you were to use the Ferocious Bite glyph as well, it could mean that you could get a fairly sizable heal every so often whenever you used Ferocious Bite, which would allow you to get at least a couple of % of your health back. Incarnation, I absolutely love this talent. This is certainly the one that I will always be choosing for Guardian. In relation to why I'm choosing it for Guardian, it is because to me this is it is a very good alternative to Berserk. The fact that it's able to bring your abilities down to cooldown. For me, whenever I've tanked, as you'll see in one of my other videos, the Moving On Up Storm Stout Brewery video, you'll see when I've used this I'm pretty much just spamming away Mangle, which is allowing me to get my rage very high, which is allowing me to use my Savage Defense very regularly. Yes, it is a 3-minute cooldown, yes it is quite high, however this is going to make it easier to do a bit more DPS. If you use this as well as using Berserk, not really sure why you would, unless you wanted your moves to cost a little bit less rage. You would in a sense almost be unstoppable. You'd have some very nice burst. Personally I'll be using Berserk, then moving on to Guardian most likely, but as we move up to raiding, It would obviously be down to a bit of experimentation about exactly when's going to be the most optimal time to activate them both. Same as cats currently have in regards to Tiger's Fury and Berserk. With Feral for this, improved cat form that allows the use of all abilities which normally require stealth, allows the use of Prowl while in combat, and removes the positional requirement of Ravage. This could be nice for this could be nice for raiding. The problem is that it is only lasting 30 seconds, although Ravage, I believe, has been buffed from live going into MOP beta and going into MOP live. This is very much the PvP talent, I would say, cats to go for, just because this is going to make us very similar to rogues being able to use Vanish. So it'll be very, very useful for PvP. Not necessarily so good for PvE. For me, I would personally say if you're a cat to go for Triants, because they would do some melee damage. Could be useful for a bit of burst in PvP as well. For Guardians, these are useless, at least for the moment, because they still just taunt, which is okay if you're not necessarily comfortable as a tank or you're getting used to tanking. If you're going into a big group of mobs, this could help out. However, with the huge threat boost that we got in Kata about 4 or 5 months ago, I can't really see any reason why you'd ever need to use this as a tank. And with bosses, at least in the case of Wrath, and I believe it was the same in Kata as well, bosses could become untauntable, which if you have to do a tank switch, it's pretty much game over, unless you have very good healers or you're just very, very lucky or you're near the end of the fight. So yeah, as a Guardian, probably not best use this talent unless they make a big change. As a cat, this is very nice. In a sense, it is an extra DPS cooldown, and to me it's better than the other 60s. Moving on to 75, Disorientating Roar. Invokes the Spirit of Ursula to roar, disorientating all enemies within 10 yards for 3 seconds. This is nice for trash, this would be nice for leveling, this would also be nice for PvP. For Guardian, I think it's pretty much useless. Unless it was the case that you had to keep some adds together, and it was quite hard to keep them together, or unless you had to do something to stop the adds attacking you. So for example, it was similar to the Maloriac fight, but the adds did a lot more damage. So in a sense you needed to stun them or do something to them so that they couldn't damage you for as long as you possibly could. Also you could just get a bit of distance on them. This would be very nice. To me this is very much like having a shockwave that warriors have, except that it's on a longer cooldown. Ursula's Vortex conjures a vortex of wind at the destination location that reduces the movement speed of all enemies within 8 yards by 50%. First time an enemy attempts to leave the vortex, winds will pull that enemy back to its centre. This, to me, I think will be good for PvP for cats, just because it means that, say for example a mage, if they try and blink away they'll get pulled back again. Unfortunately then you'll only have the time until the blink comes back again. In PvE, can't really see this being very useful. Same with Guardian, can't see this being useful. For leveling, this has some degree of usefulness if it's the case that an enemy keeps running away and you want it to stop. This could be quite useful. Apart from that, however, I don't really see a point of it for leveling, and I don't really see a huge point in it for PvE, at least for Feral and Guardian. Mighty Bash invokes the Spirit of Ursok to stun the target for 5 seconds, usable in all shapeshift forms. This is very similar to the other two in that I don't see it as being particularly useful in PvE raiding, unless you're using it on trash or unless there are adds in a boss fight that you can actually stun. Personally, the only real difference I see between this Mighty Bash and Disorientating Roar, apart from obviously one is a stun, one is to disorientate, and this one lasts for an extra 2 seconds, and this one, any damage and everything is removed. As a Guardian, I would probably say this would be the best one if it's trying to tank one ad. I would say this one if you're having to do some AoE tanking and you want to do something to stop all of the ads. But yeah, I'm not particularly too excited about this tier 75, just because it is very much just CC, which is nice for PvP. For PvE, a lot of boss fights, CC is nice, but if you're tanking, well, there's not a lot of boss fights that were in Kata that you had to use CC all the time, or that CC would even work on. But anyway, we will move on to the level 90 ones. Now these I actually really like. Start off with Heart of the Wild, increases stamina, agility and intellect by 6% at all times. Now this is nice, but as far as I'm aware it doesn't actually stack upon Mark of the Wild that we already have. So in a sense it's going to give you 1% extra agility, 1% extra intellect, but only for a very short period. It's only going to do it for 45 seconds. For that alone, that would only really be good as a DPS cooldown, but because it's a 6-minute cooldown, which is crazy, considering all of your other DPS cooldowns are only 3 minutes, just the 6-minute on this alone almost makes it pointless to go for. Now as you can see, while non-Guardian, while in bear form, agility, expertise, hit chance and armor bonuses increase, vengeance granted, chance to be hit by melee critical strikes reduced. This could be nice for a cat, or an off tank who's got a cat spec as well, just because it may allow them to quickly switch into bear, just to, I guess, almost save the day at the end of a boss fight. Apart from that, not too useful in PvE for a cat. Not too useful for Boomkin, not too useful for Resto either. Unless we have a similar fight to Ultraxion Heroic, where I did see a number of Boomkins, at least in my guild, would go into bear form, use Frenzy, Rejuvenation and Barkskin, and that would be how that they would tank the Hour of Twilight. So if there's a fight like that, this could be very useful. The downside being, again, it is a 6-minute cooldown. I mean, this is crazy. It's, for me, that is way too high. It needs to be much lower. Now admittedly this is almost a talent that almost is to put across, this is something you use in an emergency, you do not need to change forms, blah 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 blah. But for me it's still a little bit too high. Anyway, for non-feral, while in cat form, agility, hit chance and expertise increased. This could be very nice for bear catting. Unfortunately, that 6-minute cooldown, for me, it's just too much, and I can't really see as huge a benefit using this as it would have been with a lower cooldown. If it had, say, even 4 minutes cooldown, the fact that you get this for 45 seconds is really nice. For 4 minutes cooldown, this would be great, but 6, just a little bit too high for my liking. It is nice, everything that you're getting, so in a sense you're getting a buff to your stats for 45 seconds, depending on what form you are, specialization you are. Or sorry, more specialization than form. But personally, I just can't see the point in it at the moment. Dream of Cenarius, instantly, just within the first few lines of each of the 2 paragraphs, you can instantly see that this is not a Guardian or Feral talent. So we're going to move straight onwards. well, actually no, I will mention one small thing. If it's the case, I'm just trying to remember which talent it was. There's one talent here that allows you to. There's one talent here that allows you, if you're in bear form, to use Rejuvenation. Now I think it may be the case that it isn't a talent. I think it may be that it is actually a glyph. Now, for this, if you are bear and you get the talent or glyph, I will double check which one it is, that actually allows you to use Rejuvenation. This could be quite useful simply because it's passive and it will allow you to get 30% extra on your next healing spell. The bonus lasts 30 seconds. I'm not entirely sure what the internal cooldown for that's going to be, or the global cooldown for that's going to be, but once I've checked that, this could actually be quite useful, especially for very edge content or cutting edge content guilds, where every extra heal could actually be really nice for your tanks if they can put it on themselves. But unfortunately that is probably the only usefulness I can see this for either bear or a guardian or feral. Moving on finally to Nature's Vigil, increases all damage and healing done by 20% for 30 seconds. While active, all single target healing spells also damage a nearby enemy target for 25% of the healing done, and all single target damage spells and abilities also heal a nearby friendly target for 25% of the damage done. This right here is, to me personally, the talent you should be choosing for everything. Whether you're Boomkin, whether you're feral, whether you're guardian, whether you're resto. This to me, at least from playing view, possibly not so much for resto. There may be resto viewers who, from looking at the other talents in this tier, may say no, this is much more useful. If that is the case, please do feel free to comment why that is. I'm always very happy to get an insight in other specs within a certain class, and I'm always happy to learn a new thing, so please do feel free to add something. Me personally, at least looking at this as someone who had a cat main and someone who's been tanking for at least the last 2 or 3 years, to me this is the cooldown to go for. Gives you a nice damage boost for 30 seconds every 3 minutes. This mixed in with Berserk is going to be amazing. You'll have the boost, you'll have the lower energy cost, you'll have the lower rage cost. I can't see a single thing about this talent that would make a good reason for anyone to have to move as a feral or guardian to any of the other talents on this. If you want a good talent, at least in my opinion, go for Nature's Vigil at 90. Anyway, that is all of the talents gone over, as I said, with a focus for guardians and ferals. As you may have noticed, I did put a little bit in there for restos and boomkins. However, don't necessarily take my word 100% on boomkins and restos, just because I haven't really played them in enough depth, as it were, to really be able to give, I guess, a very valid opinion on it. Those are just purely my opinions. At the end of the day, you can see on the screen at the moment what I've chosen so far for my guardian. These will be essentially the same, bar switching over to Feline Swiftness and moving over to Force of Nature from Incarnation when I spec cat as well. For both guardian and for feral, I will always be going for Nature's Vigil unless there's a big change on the cooldown for Heart of Wild. But yeah, anyway, thank you very much for watching. This has been Shimryu explaining Guardian and Feral talents and my personal opinion on them. If you have any comments or any questions regarding Guardians, or whether you have any questions regarding Ferals, please do feel free to put them in the comment box. Please like and subscribe to the videos if you actually like them, or if you've learnt anything from this. Please also feel free to check out some of my other videos. I've got a Pandarian starting area. I streamed the whole thing. In truth, the stream went on for over 2 hours. So It may be a little bit long for some of you to want to watch the whole thing, but please do feel free to check it out. I really enjoyed it. I also really enjoyed making the Guardian video, and that should give you a bit more an in-depth look at Guardians. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Have a good evening.